Imagine a duke so untouchable that London calls him ice in human form, and a wild girl so fearless she walks straight into his private library like she owns the secrets on the shelves. What happens when his vow, never to touch, meets her scent? Rain on old pages, sandalwood, and trouble. Was she trespassing or hunting something buried? Did he kiss her because he wanted her, or because he couldn't bear what she awakened in him? And if society finds out what happened behind those locked doors, who will they destroy first? Her name or his crown? Stay with me, because this is the moment the Duke of Night begins to lose control. If you love forbidden Regency drama with ruthless tension, subscribe now so you don't miss the next chapter. Like this video if you're ready for scandal, share it with a friend who lives for slow burn obsession, and let's step into that library together. London wore its fog like a well-practiced lie, soft at a distance, suffocating up close. Gaslight bled into the mist, turning every street lamp into a halo and every alley into a confession waiting to happen. Carriage wheels whispered over wet cobblestones, and the city's heartbeat hid beneath silk, chandeliers, and polite smiles sharpened to points. In those bright rooms, reputation was currency. A single glance could purchase devotion. A single rumor could bankrupt a family name. And no name carried more weight, more fear than Sebastian Night. He moved through society as if he had been carved from winter itself. A duke by blood, a force by nature. Men lowered their voices when he passed, not out of respect alone, but because something in him suggested consequences. Women who had been raised to conquer with eyelashes learned quickly that he could not be conquered at all. He did not dance. He did not flirt. He did not touch. Not a gloved hand in greeting. Not a brush of fingers in a crowded corridor. Not even the harmless closeness of a waltz. London called it discipline. London called it virtue. London loved turning a man's wounds into legend. But Sebastian's vow had never been holy. It had been survival. Touch led to need, and need led to leverage. He had learned that lesson early, paid for it dearly, and sealed it into his life like a lock no one else was meant to find. Then came Maisie Lane, uninvited, unapproved, and impossible to ignore. Her name did not enter rooms like a title. It slipped in under the laughter and settled in the corners where judgment lived. Wild girl, they said, with that delicate cruelty reserved for women who refused to be trained. Too clever, too blunt, too ungrateful for the scraps of kindness society tossed her. She spoke in full sentences when she was expected to smile. She looked men in the eye when she was expected to look at the floor. And worse, she never seemed ashamed of it. That evening, charity draped itself in pearls and hypocrisy, a drawing room filled with the rustle of gowns, the muted percussion of fans, the scent of roses applied with the precision of a weapon. Sebastian arrived late, as he always did, and the room shifted around him as if the air had learned to obey. He did not expect to see her. Maisie stood near the book table, as if books were not ornaments but lifelines. Her posture was relaxed, her chin lifted, her expression unreadable in a way that unsettled the people who depended on predictable reactions. When she turned and met Sebastian's gaze, she did not flinch. She did not soften. She looked at him as if he were not a myth, but a question. The hostess fluttered forward, too eager. "Your Grace, how fortunate. Miss Lane has such an uncommon mind." Sebastian's mouth was already forming a cold acknowledgement when Maisie spoke first, voice low and steady. "I've heard you're famous for never touching what you can't control." A hush spread like ink in water. Sebastian's eyes darkened, not with attraction, not yet. Only with a sharp, unwelcome interest. He should have turned away. Instead, he held her gaze, because something in him refused to retreat from a girl everyone called wild. Later, when he returned to his townhouse, a plain envelope waited on the silver tray in the entry. No crest, no signature, only wax pressed clean and hard. Inside, a single sentence stared up at him. "If you wish to keep your vow intact, do not go to the library tomorrow. Sebastian read it once, then again. The paper smelled faintly of rain. At dawn, while London still slept beneath its fog, the Duke of Night dressed in silence and went anyway. The library was not merely a room, it was Sebastian Night's private climate, cool, controlled, and mercilessly ordered. The air carried the restrained perfume of old leather and polished oak, ink pressed into paper, dust that had learned to stay quiet. Even the silence felt curated, as though sound itself required permission to exist. He entered without haste, the note still folded in his pocket like a taunt. Fog clung to his coat, and for a moment the dampness threatened to make him feel something as ordinary as cold. He refused it. A duke did not obey weather. A duke did not obey anonymous warnings. Then he heard it. A soft, impatient whisper, pages turning too quickly to be casual, too hungry to be polite. The sound came again, and something in Sebastian's spine tightened, the same instinct that had kept him alive when politeness failed. No servant moved like that. No guest would dare. He advanced between the shelves, each step measured, each breath shallow. He expected to find theft, mischief, perhaps an insolent admirer. Instead, he found a presence that altered the room before it even spoke. Maisie Lane sat on the floor with her skirts pooled around her like dark water. A heavy volume rested open on her knees, and the tips of her fingers, bare, ungloved, were smudged with ink, as if she had been handling truth without fear of staining herself. She looked up at him, as if he had arrived late. "You came," she said. Sebastian's gaze swept the scene with cold precision. "You should not be here." Maisie blinked once, slow and unimpressed. "Neither should your pride," she replied, and turned a page as if that were the end of it. He felt the insult land cleanly. "This library is private." "And yet your secrets keep finding exits," she said, voice quiet, almost bored. Then she rose in one unhurried motion, smoothing her skirts with careless grace. She was close enough now that he noticed the scent, subtle at first, then unmistakable, threading itself into the air like a spell that refused to be broken. Not sweet, not floral, not designed to soothe. Rain on stone warmed by summer, sandalwood softened by skin, the green bitterness of crushed leaves. Something alive beneath it all, as if the world beyond London's etiquette had stepped into his carefully sealed sanctuary. Sebastian's throat tightened. His body registered her before his mind could reassert its laws. The shift enraged him. "You provoke," he said, voice low. Maisie's eyes held his without blinking. "No," she murmured. "I refuse to shrink." She moved as if to pass him, as if he were merely another obstacle. Her shoulder came within a breath of his chest, close enough that the scent rose sharply, invading, anchoring itself beneath his restraint. For one dangerous instant, he forgot every rule that had built him. His hand moved before permission existed. He caught her wrist. The glove between them should have kept him detached. It did not. He felt her warmth anyway, felt the steady pulse beneath his grip. Unafraid, undamaged by him. Maisie glanced down at his hand, then back up at his face, and the faintest curve touched her mouth. "Careful, Your Grace," she whispered, not warning him, but tempting fate. "You're touching what you claim you never touch." Sebastian's breath hitched, sharp and involuntary, and in the quiet, surrounded by books that had never betrayed him, his voice did something unforgivable, softened into a question that sounded like surrender. "What have you done to me?" Maisie did not flinch from his grip. She did not soften into apology, did not offer him the comfort of compliance. She simply stood there, wrist caught in his gloved hand, eyes steady, as if she had been waiting to see whether the Duke of Night would finally admit he was made of the same frail materials as everyone else. Sebastian's fingers tightened once, a reflex of command he no longer trusted. The vow had always been his armor, hammered into place after lessons he refused to name. Touch led to need led to weakness, weakness led to being owned. He had kept his life clean of it. No warmth, no closeness, no softness that could be turned against him. And yet her scent, rain and sandalwood and something feral, slipped past every defense like a lock picking itself open. "What have you done to me?" he repeated, quieter now, as if the question had become dangerous simply by existing. Maisie's mouth curved. Not kind, not cruel, just knowing. "Nothing," she said. "You're only noticing what you've been starving." The words struck with intimate precision. Sebastian should have released her, should have stepped back, should have reclaimed distance like a man reclaiming a throne. Instead, his gaze dropped to her mouth, and something in him snapped, not loudly, but completely. He pulled her closer. The first contact was not gentle. It was a collision of restraint and rebellion, a confession made with no words. His mouth found hers, as if he could erase the question by devouring the answer. He tasted the damp edge of the morning on her lips, the bite of something unsweet and honest. Maisie did not yield. She answered him with a steady fierceness that made his blood turn hot, her free hand catching the front of his coat, not clinging, but anchoring herself like a woman who refused to be moved unless she chose. For an instant the world narrowed to breath, heat, and the quiet shock of his own desire, raw, untrained, and humiliatingly alive. He tore himself away as if burned. His chest rose and fell too fast, as though he had run a great distance and found no finish line. His gloved hand hovered near her face, then stopped, shaking, furious with the urge it could no longer deny. His eyes met hers, dark with anger, and something worse, need. Maisie's composure returned first. She lifted her hand and wiped her mouth with the back of it, slow and unbothered, as if the kiss had been his loss, not her conquest. "Now you know," she said softly. "It wasn't virtue. It was fear." Sebastian's jaw clenched. "Leave." Maisie did not rush. She stepped around him with careless grace, skirts whispering against the floor, as if she were the one dismissing him. At the doorway she paused, not looking back. "By tomorrow," she added, voice calm as a verdict, "someone will try to sell this." Then she was gone, taking the warmth with her, leaving behind only silence and the lingering trace of rain on old paper. The next morning, a society sheet arrived with the breakfast tray, ink still sharp, gossip still hungry. One line sat on the page like a noose drawn tight. A woman was seen leaving the Duke of Knight's library at dawn. London did not require names to ruin a woman. It required only a suggestion, neatly printed, passed from hand to gloved hand, with the same excitement people reserved for forbidden sweets. By noon, the single line had multiplied into 1,000 variations, each one uglier than the last, each one delivered with a smile that pretended innocence. A woman seen leaving the Duke of Knight's library at dawn. Some insisted she must be foreign, mysterious enough to excuse impropriety. Others claimed she was a servant elevated by sin. A few, crueler and more entertained, whispered the words, "wild girl," as if they had been waiting for an excuse to spit them aloud. Men who had never been denied began to talk as if denial were an insult. Women who had learned to survive by obeying rules sharpened those same rules into weapons. Sebastian moved through the day like a blade sheathed in velvet. He attended the expected calls. He gave the expected cold greetings. He did not betray panic, not in his posture, not in his voice, not even in the careful way he folded the paper and set it aside as if gossip were beneath his notice. But the city felt louder now, as though every corridor held listeners. At a literary salon that evening, conversation pretended to be about poetry, but the true subject hung in the air like smoke. Sebastian arrived late, the way he always did, and the room adjusted around him with practiced reverence, until it remembered it had something new to hunger over. Then Maisie Lane appeared. She did not enter as a culprit. She entered as a certainty. Her gown was simple, dark, cut with quiet defiance rather than fashionable pleading. She carried a small notebook instead of a fan, as if she had come to take notes on the arrogance of those who believed themselves untouchable. She spoke with calm precision, correcting a gentleman's recitation without raising her voice, dismantling his smug certainty with a single question that revealed he had never understood the words he loved to perform. Laughter rippled, then caught, as people remembered she was not meant to win. Sebastian watched her from the edge of the circle, his expression unreadable. She did not seek him. She did not chase his gaze, and yet when she finally looked toward him, her eyes met his as if they shared a secret the entire room could sense but not touch. The flicker of heat in his chest made him furious. He turned away first. As he left, a man brushed close, too close, perfumed and smiling. A viscount whose charm had always carried teeth. "Your Grace," the viscount murmured, voice honeyed with implication. "I do hope you're keeping your collections properly secured." Sebastian paused, just long enough to let the air harden. "Curiosity can become a habit," he said softly. "Habits can be broken." The viscount's smile widened, delighted rather than warned. "Oh, I suspect something has already been broken." That night, a new envelope waited on the silver tray in Sebastian's entryway. Thicker, finer paper, sealed in black wax like a threat dressed for dinner. He opened it and found only a few neat lines, confident as a knife. "I have proof of what happened in your library. Bring money, or bring your dignity for me to crush." Sebastian did not burn the letter. Fire was too theatrical, too honest. He treated it the way he treated every threat, by refusing to let it see his pulse. He read the neat lines once more, memorized the pressure of the pen strokes, the expensive weight of the paper, the faint trace of bergamot meant to suggest refinement. It was not refinement. It was disguise. He went to the library as if drawn by gravity, as if the room could still offer the kind of control the rest of London pretended he possessed. The shelves stood in perfect ranks, indifferent to scandal, loyal only to silence. Yet even here, the air felt changed, as though a single forbidden breath had taught the house how to keep secrets differently. Maisie Lane was already there, not hiding, not waiting like a supplicant. She stood near the reading table with her gloves on, chin lifted, expression calm enough to be insulting. The sight of her, whole, unbroken, sent something sharp through him that was not relief and not quite anger, but a protective instinct he despised for its urgency. "You received it," she said, eyes flicking toward the letter in his hand. Sebastian held it up. "Did you send this?" Maisie's mouth curved, faint and cold. "If I meant to ruin you, Your Grace, I wouldn't need stationery." The truth of it struck like a slap. Sebastian hated that he believed her. He hated more that he wanted to. He stepped closer, forcing the air between them to narrow, trying to reclaim dominance through distance. Her scent reached him anyway. Rain, sandalwood, something vivid that refused to be contained. "You knew this would happen," he said. "I warned you," Maisie replied, unblinking. "London doesn't forgive what it can't own. Someone saw an opening the moment you forgot yourself." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "No one saw anything." Maisie's gaze sharpened. "Private rooms aren't private when the wrong people have keys." The idea landed heavy and ugly. Sebastian's mind moved through names like a blade through silk. Staff, acquaintances, rivals, men who smiled too sweetly. He felt the edges of his own past stirring, the old dread he had sealed behind that vow. "What do you want?" he asked, because he needed her defined. Enemy, ally, threat, anything that could be controlled. Maisie stepped closer, voice dropping into something steady and dangerous. "I want this stopped," she said. "Not for you, for me. When men play games with dukes, they lose money. When they play games with women like me, they take pieces." A silence opened between them, honest as a wound. Sebastian stared at her, seeing for the first time the cost behind her composure. The way defiance could be armor when no one offered protection without a price. "And how," he said at last, "do you propose we stop it?" "We make a pact," Maisie answered. "We feed them a story they think they can control, while we find the hand holding the leash." Sebastian's eyes narrowed. "You expect my trust?" "I expect your intelligence," she corrected. "Trust can come later, or not at all." He hesitated, just a fraction, because agreeing meant letting her close to the center of his life. It meant admitting she mattered enough to change his patterns. His vow tightened around him like iron. Maisie's expression did not soften. "There's one condition," she said. Sebastian's voice went cold. "Name it." "I stay in your house," she replied. "Under your roof, where your enemies can't reach me." Sebastian felt something in him recoil, and something else, darker, lean forward. "And where?" Maisie added, eyes locked on his. "You'll have to prove you can keep your hands, and your control, to yourself." By nightfall, Maisie Lane's presence had altered Sebastian Night's house the way a storm alters a coastline. Quietly, relentlessly, leaving nothing quite where it used to be. The servants attempted composure, but their caution carried sound. A tray steadied too carefully. A footstep redirected. A door closed with an extra inch of restraint. It was not scandal they feared so much as disruption. The Night household had been built on a single religion, order, and Maisie moved through it like a heresy with a pulse. Sebastian gave instructions as if rules could replace trust. A suite in the West Wing, a maid assigned, meals at set hours, no visitors, no letters sent without his knowledge, no wandering after midnight. Each decree fell from his mouth with the clean authority he had mastered long ago, but he felt the truth underneath. These were not protections, they were walls. Maisie listened without blinking. When he finished, she nodded once, as if he had merely recited a shopping list. "And my terms," she said. Sebastian's gaze narrowed. "You are in my house." "Exactly," Maisie replied, voice calm enough to be insulting. "So here is mine. You will not hide me like shame. You will not lock me in comfort and call it safety. And you will not mistake cooperation for surrender." The audacity of her steadiness scraped against him. He should have crushed it with a single icy sentence. Instead, he found himself studying her face for the first fracture, the first hint of fear he could name and manage. There was none. Only that infuriating, luminous refusal to be made smaller. Days passed, and Maisie did not behave like a guest. She behaved like a woman who had survived too long on the edge of other people's mercy to believe in it. She read at breakfast and left ink smudges on the edge of her plate as if knowledge mattered more than manners. She corrected a footman's pronunciation without cruelty, and the footman, astonished, thanked her as if no one had ever treated him like a mind before. She asked for books the library staff had been told no one touched. When a maid tried to lace her too tightly, Maisie undid it herself with a patient expression that made obedience look childish. Sebastian told himself it was strategy. Keep her close, keep her protected, keep her visible. But the truth was uglier. He began to listen for her without meaning to. Her voice in a corridor, the faint brush of her skirts on a stair, the quiet click of a door that had not existed in his awareness before she arrived. At night, he found himself remembering the scent of rain on old pages and hating that it had become a kind of hunger. On the third evening, a fine mist pressed against the windows, blurring the city into a watercolor of secrets. Sebastian entered the library expecting silence, and found Maisie already there, standing before a shelf of rare volumes as if she had been born among them. "You collect words," she said softly, "and still live as if you're afraid of what they might unlock." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "Choose carefully." Maisie reached for a deep green volume and pulled it free. Something slipped from between its pages. Thin paper, folded too many times, and fluttered down like a fallen feather. She caught it, before it touched the floor. A letter. Her eyes scanned the first lines, and for the first time since she arrived, her composure shifted, not into fear, but into recognition sharp enough to sting. Sebastian stepped closer, voice low. "Give it to me." Maisie looked up, eyes dark and steady. "This isn't nothing," she said. "This is a confession." Sebastian felt his pulse turn heavy, like a door closing. He saw the name on the page before he could stop himself. An old name, a buried one, the kind that made a vow feel less like discipline and more like punishment. And Maisie whispered, almost to herself, "Now I understand why someone wants you ruined." Sebastian took the letter from Maisie with a careful slowness that felt like restraint disguised as politeness. The paper was old, the ink faded, but the words still carried weight, heavy enough to bend a life. He read the lines once, then again, as if repetition could make them harmless. It did the opposite. The name on the page stirred something he had buried so thoroughly, he had convinced himself it was gone. Maisie watched him with the steady attention of a woman who had learned that truths never arrive gently. "That name," she said quietly, "is the kind that makes people disappear." "It means nothing to you," Sebastian replied, but the lie came out too clean, too practiced. His voice held warning and shame in equal measure. Maisie's eyes narrowed. "Then why does your hand shake?" His fingers tightened around the letter. The glove should have hidden the tremor. It didn't. He folded the paper as if creasing it could crease the past into obedience, then slipped it into his inner pocket, close to his heart where it did not belong. "You're here because of blackmail," he said, forcing the subject back into a shape he could control. "Not to pry at graves." Maisie stepped closer, and her scent rose. Rain on stone, sandalwood warmed by skin, ink and defiance. "Graves don't send letters," she murmured. "People do, and people only resurrect the dead when it profits them." Sebastian's jaw tightened. He could feel the house around them listening, every wall holding its breath. "Who taught you to read danger that quickly?" he asked, too sharply. Maisie's expression flickered. Just once, something old moving behind her eyes. "Someone who wanted me quiet," she said. "Someone who thought curiosity was a disease." Sebastian felt the implication settle like ash. He had known women were punished for being bold, but knowing was not the same as looking at the proof of it standing in front of him, unbowed. His vow suddenly tasted bitter. Not virtue, not discipline. A life lived like penance for something he refused to speak. A knock sounded, precise and controlled. The butler entered without the usual softness, as if even he sensed the house had crossed into dangerous territory. He carried an envelope on a tray, its wax seal dark and fresh. Sebastian took it. The paper smelled faintly of bergamot, too deliberate to be accidental. He broke the seal. This time there was no grand speech, no theatrical flourish, just coordinates, a time, a place, and one line that tightened the air in his lungs. "Bring the girl, unless you're ready to watch London learn who she really is." Maisie read over his shoulder without asking permission. The corner of her mouth lifted, sharp and fearless. "So that's the real game," she said softly. Sebastian's voice dropped, dangerous with calm. "They think you're a weakness." Maisie's gaze met his, unflinching. "Let them," she whispered. "Weakness is what men call a woman they can't own." Sebastian folded the letter and slid it into his pocket beside the confession from the book. Two ghosts pressed against his chest now. One from the past, one from the present, both demanding payment. "We go," he said. Maisie's eyes gleamed. "As bait," she answered. Sebastian's hand hovered, stopped, then lowered, as if touching her would be both comfort and catastrophe. "Stay beside me," he murmured, "no matter what they say." Maisie tilted her head, voice velvet over steel. "And if your precious control breaks again, your grace?" Sebastian's gaze darkened. "Then London will learn," he said quietly. what I become when someone tries to use you. Outside, the fog thickened, pressing against the windows like an eavesdropper, and somewhere in that sleeping city, someone waited to decide whether Maisie Lane would be exposed or claimed. The carriage carried them into streets where respectability became a costume and danger wore a gentleman's gloves. Fog thickened in the narrow lanes, swallowing sound, softening the hard angles of London into something that could hide a knife. Sebastian sat opposite Maisie without speaking, his posture composed, his gaze fixed on the dark window as if it could reflect a future he might still control. Maisie's hands rested in her lap, steady, unadorned by trembling. She did not look like prey. She looked like a match kept dry in a storm. The address led them behind a respectable arcade of shuttered shops, where the stones were slick with mist and the air smelled faintly of damp wool and soot. Sebastian paid the driver to leave without question. The moment the wheels faded, the silence felt staged, too clean, too waiting. At the end of the passage stood a door without a sign, no crest, no lamp, only a thin line of light beneath it like a smile held in the dark. Sebastian opened it without knocking. Inside, the room was stripped of comfort. Bare walls, a small table with a sealed packet, a quill, and a single chair placed like an insult. The air carried bergamot again, sharp, deliberate, layered over smoke that had seeped into fabric and refused to leave. It smelled like someone trying to imitate elegance and failing. Maisie's gaze moved once around the room. "No one," she said softly. "Not visible," Sebastian replied, voice low. His eyes traced the corners, the seams, the quiet places where men hid and called it superiority. "They want us to speak first." A slow clap answered him, soft, amused, measured. The viscount stepped out of the shadow with the ease of a man who believed shadows belonged to him. His smile arrived before the rest of his face, polished and predatory. "Your Grace," he purred, "and Miss Lane, how obliging." Maisie's chin lifted. "You," she said, not surprised, only disgusted. The viscount's gaze slid over her with the familiar arrogance of a man who mistook women for objects placed in rooms for his pleasure. "Do you know what they're calling you now?" he asked lightly. "A scent, a scandal, a weakness." Maisie's eyes sharpened. "I'm none of those," she replied. "I'm the consequence." The viscount chuckled, then tapped the packet on the table. "Sign," he said to Sebastian. "Pay, and perhaps I'll allow her to keep her name intact." Sebastian did not move toward the chair. "You claimed proof," he said, voice cold enough to frost glass. "Oh, I have it," the viscount murmured, delighted. "And more. The kind of truth that doesn't merely embarrass, it destroys." A curtain shifted behind him. A second figure stepped forward, silent as practiced cruelty, and in his hand he held a small dark object that caught the thin light with a malicious gleam, a signet ring. Old, heavy, familiar. Sebastian's blood turned to ice, because he knew that ring the way a man knows the shape of his own scars. And beside him, Maisie breathed one quiet word, almost inaudible, like recognition turning into dread. "Impossible." The ring hung in the air between them like a verdict. It was not merely metal. It was memory made tangible, dragged from whatever grave Sebastian had sealed it in. The crest, worn at the edges, still carried the arrogance of a name that once ruled rooms with a glance. Sebastian's throat tightened as if the past had reached through time and found his pulse. The viscount watched the change in him with hungry satisfaction. "Ah," he murmured, "so it does matter." Maisie's gaze flicked from the ring to Sebastian's face, reading the shift in his silence with frightening precision. "That belongs to the name in the letter," she said quietly. Sebastian did not deny it. Denial would have been a mercy he did not deserve. The vow he wore like ice suddenly felt like a confession. He had not been disciplined. He had been terrified of being touched by anything real. Sign, the Viscount said again, voice sweet as poison. Pay, and I'll keep London from learning what you buried and who she truly is. Maisie's chin lifted. Don't speak about me like I'm an object you can trade. The Viscount's smile sharpened. Everything is tradable, Miss Lane. Some people are simply priced lower. Sebastian's composure shifted into something colder than anger. You brought that ring to frighten me, he said softly, but you've made one mistake. And what would that be? The Viscount asked, amused. Sebastian reached toward the packet on the table as if to comply. The Viscount's eyes glittered, already tasting victory. Maisie's breath stayed steady, but Sebastian felt the tension in her like a wire pulled taut. Then Sebastian turned the packet over, revealing a faint crease and a mark only he would recognize. A deliberate flaw, a silent signal. The door behind them opened. Footsteps entered with controlled certainty, not hurried, not hesitant, the sound of men who did not need permission. A severe-faced gentleman stepped inside, followed by two others. No uniforms, no theatrical badges, only authority worn like a second skin. Their eyes went first to the ring, as if the object itself had summoned them. That ring, the severe gentleman said quietly, was reported missing from a sealed estate inquiry. The Viscount's smile faltered. This is absurd, he snapped. You have no jurisdiction here. You reopened a sealed matter, the man replied. Jurisdiction tends to follow greed. The messenger holding the ring stiffened, suddenly aware he had become the weakest link in a chain. His fingers tightened around the metal. His eyes darted toward the Viscount, begging for direction. And the Viscount gave it with a look. The messenger lunged, not toward the door, but toward Maisie. It happened in a violent blink. A harsh grab at her wrist. A pull meant to turn her into a shield. A bargaining chip. A threat with a heartbeat. Maisie twisted, refusing panic, but the grip was strong and desperate. The men of inquiry moved, too late by a fraction. Sebastian moved faster. He seized the messenger's arm and wrenched him back with controlled brutality, turning momentum into punishment. The ring slipped free and clattered to the floor like a dropped confession. The inquiry men caught the messenger and pinned him down with efficient force, their faces unreadable. Silence fell hard. Maisie steadied herself, chin still lifted, eyes bright with fury. They'll come for me next, she said softly. Not fear, fact. Sebastian's voice dropped into something only she could truly hear. Let them, he murmured. They'll find me standing in their way. The severe gentleman bent and lifted the ring with a cloth, as if even metal could carry disease. This will be catalogued, he said, and every name connected to it will be questioned. The Viscount's gaze flicked between them, calculating escape, leverage, damage control. His mouth opened, ready to twist the story into something survivable. Then he smiled again, thin and vicious. Question all you like, he said. By morning, London will still have its headline. And Sebastian understood. The inquiry was only half the battle. The other half was the city itself, waiting to devour whatever truth it was fed first. London woke hungry. Before the fog could lift, before the milkmaids had finished their routes, the first whispers were already dressed as facts. A sealed inquiry, a missing ring, a duke caught in the same sentence as crime. The city did what it always did, took something complex and made it cruel enough to swallow in one bite. Sebastian brought Maisie back to his house through side streets, avoiding the brighter avenues where eyes lingered and mouths worked. The West Wing received her like a secret forced into luxury. Servants pretended not to stare. Curtains were drawn. Fires were lit. And still, the cold remained. Because cold was not weather. Cold was what London called protection when it meant isolation. Maisie refused to sit quietly. She stood at the window, gaze fixed on nothing and everything, as if she could see the shape of the next attack in the mist. They'll print it, she said. Whatever version hurts most. Sebastian loosened his gloves and set them aside with an unfamiliar roughness. The skin of his hands looked pale in the lamplight, exposed like truth. They'll try, he answered. But they won't control the narrative. Maisie turned, eyes bright with that fierce steadiness that made him feel both saved and ruined. Narrative, she echoed. That's what you call survival. Sebastian did not deny it. He crossed to his desk and began writing. 2 letters, then a third, each one a knife wrapped in silk. Names, dates, carefully chosen witnesses. The kind of words that did not beg society for mercy but cornered it into compliance. He sealed the first with his crest, the second with plain wax. The third he did not seal at all, as if daring fate to read it early. Outside, the house shifted, footsteps in the corridor, a door closing too softly, the subtle sound of a servant being told to deliver something without speaking of it. Sebastian heard everything now. Control did not calm him, it sharpened him. A knock cut through the room, no announcement, no polite pause. The door opened, and a footman stepped inside, face pale, holding a folded sheet of paper as if it were burning him. Sebastian took it. His eyes scanned the lines. A new society broadside had been distributed with indecent speed. The ink was fresh enough to stain fingers, and the words were crafted with deliberate savagery, hinting at a duke entangled in scandal, suggesting a woman with a hidden identity, implying that Maisie Lane was not simply wild, but dangerous by blood. Maisie watched Sebastian's face change. "Say it," she demanded, refusing the kindness of silence. He held the paper out. She read. Her expression did not crumble. It hardened. "So they've chosen," she said softly. "They want me reduced to a headline." Sebastian's voice went low, dangerous with calm. "They want you, afraid." Maisie lifted her chin. "And you?" she asked. "Do you want me hidden?" The question struck deeper than it should have. Sebastian stepped closer, and for a moment his restraint wavered, not toward desire, but toward the urge to anchor her, to promise something impossible. "I want you alive," he said. Maisie's eyes narrowed. "Alive isn't enough." The house bell rang, once, then again, urgent. Another footman appeared at the doorway, breath tight. "Your Grace," he said. "There's a crowd forming outside, and a messenger from the press. They're asking for her," Maisie finished, voice steady as steel. Sebastian turned toward the hall, the fog of London already pressing at his windows like an audience. His jaw clenched, and something in his gaze settled into decision. He reached for his coat, and Maisie, without waiting for permission, reached for his hand.